Hello and welcome to Liberty Wolf, episode number 24. My name is Zach Strong, the creator of this podcast. I invite you, if you enjoy what you're hearing, to push subscribe and to go back and listen to the other episodes of my podcast. More importantly, I would love for you to share this and previous episodes on your social media, in your emails, with your friends, whatever, because we're only going to defeat the forces that are trying to tear down our culture if we rally around common standards and if we unite together, those of us who are like-minded, those of us who actually love our faith, families, and freedom. And so I invite you to come along with me, not just as a listener or spectator, but do your part to help share this and get this message out to people. Today we will be talking about cancel culture. Now, the word did exist before this current phase of monument destroying and total societal insanity, but it has really come into vogue now. Everywhere you look, you hear cancel culture this, cancel culture that. So what exactly is cancel culture? Let's start off with a bit of a definition. Now, I'm taking this from the New York Post. That's not exactly a far-right extremist, outfit, right? So they defined cancel culture as, quote, the phenomenon of promoting the canceling of people, brands, and even shows and movies due to what some consider to be offensive or problematic remarks or ideologies. That definition is taken from Brooke Cato's article from July 10th of this year, titled, What is Cancel Culture? Everything to Know About the Toxic Online Trend. Now that's a good title because it really is toxic. And it's not just online, though you usually see it online. I mean, everywhere you look. It's here on YouTube, it's on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. It's, of course, on Facebook. That's where I have most of my work. It's everywhere you look now. It's in the mainstream controlled press as well. People, even fairly liberal individuals, are being quote unquote canceled by this mob. It's an online lynch mob. I like to call them a hate mob. I have an article on that on my website, theamericancitadel.com, called Hate Mob. Now, a good place to start, perhaps, is to say that cancel culture, it's not new. It might be coming into vogue now and becoming more mainstream and everyone knows about it, but it's not new. It's been going on for generations. Now, what is the origin of this movement, if you will? What is the origin of this kind of totalitarian groupthink, thought crime sort of system that's going on? It is communism. Cancel culture is communist culture. Now, political correctness, you could say, maybe was the mother of the current cancel culture, but where did political correctness come from? Political correctness is literally a Soviet invention. It was imported from the Soviet Union. After Lenin and the Bolsheviks took over in a coup d'etat, with Western funding, I should add, when they took over Russia, then when the Communist Party, finally consolidated power in Russia, and they did so through civil war and murder and just total brutality. When they finally did that, then anyone who wanted to accomplish anything, to go anywhere, be successful, and not be shot or put into a gulag, right? They had to go along to get along. So what did they go along with? They went along with the Communist Party line, right? So if you wanted to succeed, if you didn't want to be declared an enemy of the state and hunted down and have all your privileges, if you will, or your rights, more importantly, if you didn't want to have those canceled out, taken away from you, stripped, then you had to dang well get in line with what Lenin and the party was saying. Ideologically, politically, whatever, you had to go along with the party line. You had to toe that line directly. Now, this mindset, it's totalitarian. That's the only way to describe it. This totalitarianism, in the form of political correctness, then was imported by Soviet agents into the United States. It took root in academia. It seeped into the media. into Hollywood, of course, which has been dominated from the beginning by communists. And now it's filtered out through a lot of hard work and brainwashing and indoctrination, especially in the public schools and universities, and through media again. And it's into the whole culture. Even people who would never, ever in a million years consider themselves Marxists or socialists, or if you want to take a lesser term like social democrats, democratic socialists, even those people, a lot of them are cowards. Let's face it, humans are cowards. They go along to get along. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to offend anyone. Our culture here in the United States, we are so tolerant. I frequently talk about the bane of tolerance, right? It is a horrible thing. You're not supposed to be tolerant of evil. You're not supposed to be tolerant of ideas that will strip you of your rights, that will ultimately hurt your family, that will ultimately destroy the economy, that will ultimately turn your society inwards against each other. That's not a virtue. It is a vice, though, and it is a tool our enemies, in particular the communists, use to get us to clash against each other, to get us to tear each other apart, because they have to tear us down from the inside first before they can even dream of taking us over. I mean, you know that famous quote, right, from the Japanese general about, I would never want to take over, to invade the United States because there would be a rifle behind every blade of grass, right? So you cannot defeat a strong, united America. You can't do it. The whole world combined couldn't do it. But a divided America, a divided states of America, yeah, you can take them over. But you have to keep them divided, though. And you do that by making them clash, by making one group offended at the other group, by playing one group off against the other. Divide and conquer. You tell one group of people, you're a victim. This other group, they're the enemy. So you tell the women that they're victims of the oppressive male patriarchy. You tell blacks, those whites have been holding you down. Get off of their reservation and plantation, right? So it doesn't really matter which groups you play off against one another, though some are more natural than others, blacks versus whites, for instance. What matters is that you're playing each other, one group against another. Divide and conquer. That's the age-old strategy. Now, I really love how Yuri Bezmenov, KGB defector, how he describes this. There's a famous online video you can find on YouTube. Well, you could find it on YouTube, and it's a little harder to find now. They've taken down a lot of these videos. I guess they've tried to cancel Yuri Bezmenov. Anyhow, he talks about the process of destabilization and demoralization. He goes through, he lays it out literally on a chalkboard, step by step by step, how the communists will try, and were trying then, and still are trying, to bring down the United States. Because we are the last hurdle to a total one world government ruled by the communists. We're the last ones. In particular, the Christian American gun owner. We are the last ones. We are the last line of defense for the world. When we give it up, when we give up our rights, when we surrender, the world's done. There'll be 1,000 years of darkness, right? As Ronald Reagan said, if we surrender. So he talked about the process of destabilization. Part of that is to radicalize and politicize human relations. Every little thing should be politicized, even things that should never be brought into politics, like food brand names, for instance. I'll get to that in a moment. And especially you want to radicalize everything so that people cannot come together in agreements. They can't reconcile anything. They have to go to a third party to be an arbiter. They have to go to a judge, for instance, or a court in order for them to be a mediator and to facilitate some sort of compromise between these two antagonistic groups. So that's one of the things that Yuri Bezmenov said, is that it does not matter if it's black versus white, yellow against red, whatever. So long as one group comes into, quote, antagonistic clash, unquote, with another. So again, divide and conquer. Create friction. Communists are the lords of chaos. Communism can never come to power fully unless there is disorder, unless there is infighting and internal divisions. They can't do it. It's impossible. And so they need there to be chaos. They crave the chaos. They're agents of disorder and destruction. That's what they do. They come in there, they see a wound, they pour salt in that wound. They see something, anything that's so stupid that you would never think about it. If they can perceive it as a grievance, then they whisper into your ear, look, you should be upset about this. You should be offended about this thing. Like the other day, what was it? Some feminist wacko, she said that that tall buildings and structures that point upwards, that's similar to an erection. And so that's evidence, of course, of anti-woman bias, the male-dominated patriarchy. I mean, you can't get much more insane than that. And so again, any little thing that you can even, in the outer reaches of reality, or of imagination, I should say, try to make reality for some people, they'll do that. They'll latch onto that and not let go until you are totally convinced that you're being victimized by someone or something. And the perfect example of that, again, is the feminists and then the inner cities, where they all think the whites are out to get them. All statistics to the contrary be damned. Anyhow, so this comes back to and plays directly into cancel culture, which is communist culture. Again, this communist idea and tactic of destabilizing and radicalizing and politicizing absolutely everything, creating all these divisions. There are other groups, of course, out there trying to do the same thing, but no one has ever done it as well as the Marxist communists. They are the ones that are the most well-organized secret society in existence. They are the most powerful global force, bar none. And so they have been able to manipulate through the media and elsewhere people into being so angry and upset and offended. Remember that definition we just used. It's the cancel culture is the phenomenon of canceling things that some people think could be offensive or problematic. I love that term, problematic. What does that even mean? I mean, to tyrants, freedom is problematic, right? And these people are mini tyrants. There are these little despots running around. They wish they were in charge of your life. They want to dominate you. They want you to go along with what they believe. It doesn't matter what you believe. They want to rule your life. They want to control you. Now, the funny thing about that is they're actually being controlled by the social engineers manipulating everything. They themselves are the puppets on a string. And ultimately, the social engineers themselves are puppets on the string of Lucifer, who is really up there manipulating everything. I mean, this really is a spiritual war, and I have a really great quote on that in just a few moments. But a couple things to just show what this cancel culture is doing, what kind of insane lengths they're going to. They have been singling out brand names that people have loved and bought forever, such as Aunt Jemima, the syrup. Right, well, you can't call it Aunt Jemima now because Aunt Jemima was black, and so to use that name is obviously racist. I don't know. I mean, no sane person can actually think that. But again, these people are unhinged. They're deranged. They've given up any semblance of reality, as Isaiah prophesied in the Old Testament. Good would be called evil, and evil would be called good. Up is down, black is white, whatever. It's an inversion of reality. And so another one is Uncle Ben's rice. Of course, that's racist because Uncle Ben's black, right? Goya beans. Do you really have to go into what Goya is offensive about? J.K. Rowling. All right, J.K. Rowling, famous Harry Potter author. She's not exactly a right winger. And yet they've tried to cancel her because she is at least smart enough to say a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And no, I'm not going to conflate the two and say transgenderism is a thing when it's not. It's really a mental disorder, as the head psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins University has said, for instance. And so they've gone on. It's just it gets more and more absurd by the hour. Eskimo, right? The ice cream. Of course, you have to get rid of that because they say that's offensive to Eskimos. I mean, I used to live in Alaska. There aren't a lot of Eskimos running around out there picketing and boycotting ice cream. But hey, the white guys in liberal New York City or in communist California, they're the ones that are upset. They have nothing better to do. They have it so well in this country and so much prosperity and freedom that they have time to sit back and bicker and try to criticize and tear down other people because they're just bored, I guess. They don't know nothing else to do. We have such prosperity in this country that other countries can't even fathom. That we have time enough to have whole groups of people organized into what is now considered a culture, cancel culture. And the whole culture is based on, its existence is dependent upon destruction, destroying other things. And for no reason, just because you are offended. There's lyrics of a song I like. It says, "If I offended you, you needed it." We're really about that point because there are a lot of people that need to be offended with the truth. And they need to really, really wake up. Now, as I said, this is all about conformity. Excuse me. It's obey the party or suffer the wrath of the hate mob. It is a mob mentality. It's democracy. This is why the founding fathers hated democracy. They said it's like a volcano ready to explode anytime, a democracy. Again, if you can manipulate the public and you have a democracy, that means 51% can dominate, control, terrorize, whatever. The 49%. The 49% have no rights in a democracy. 51% determines everything, including what privileges and rights you get to enjoy. If the majority says, sorry, you are racist because you're white, well, then that goes and you can't say anything about it, or else you're racist. And that's where we're going. Though these people are not in the majority yet, they certainly are a majority in the media, in academia. They're a majority on Wall Street, who funds a lot of this social destruction, social engineering. But they're becoming powerful enough to almost be the majority. I mean, they have enough power, they might as well be the majority at this point. And the people who are in the majority are so cowardly, they don't want to rock the boat. They are so terrified of being considered racist. Why? Why would you be considered racist? I mean, why would you be scared of people calling you racist when you never held anyone in slavery, right? Slavery ended before anyone alive was born. And yet you have towns in like North Carolina right now, was it Asheville, North Carolina, something like that, just passed a resolution where they're going to give reparations in the form of social programs for blacks because of slavery. How insane is that? Yeah, but this is only going to spread. I mean, there's been national talk of having a national reparations bill passed. I mean, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. People call us Mormons. That's not the correct term. You call us Christians or Latter-day Saints if you want. Our people was persecuted. We actually had an extermination order officially passed against us. We were driven out of the borders of the United States. Out in Utah, in the Utah Territory, we were put under martial law. The U.S. Army put cannon up on the hillside, pointing them down at us. Okay, we had people raped and murdered, driven from their homes, property stolen. Joseph Smith, the founder of the church, and his brother were murdered after being imprisoned on false charges of treason. Then they were murdered by a black-faced mob. So should I get reparations then from people in Missouri, for instance? No, of course not. Because none of them alive did it. And again, we should be dealing with individuals, not groups. This obsession with focusing on groups, group rights, that's not a thing. There are individual rights. There are human rights. There are not group rights. There are no gay rights, for instance. You can't say, I'm gay, I have certain rights. No, you're a human, you have certain rights. You don't have special rights because you're gay. You don't have special rights because you're black. You don't have special rights because you're so confused you think you're a woman if you're a man. That does not bestow upon you any extra privileges or rights in society. Only a very sick society would grant you any extra sort of privileges because of that. Yeah, that's where we're at today. They tore down the statues of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, even Gandhi. They've defaced and spray painted groups of statues of abolitionists. Why? Because they're so ignorant. They don't know that who's an abolitionist, who's not. They probably couldn't even tell you what abolition was. Honestly, all it is about conformity. Oh, this is what the group's doing. They're vandalizing stuff that maybe could be racist, that has smacks of some sort of racism. Basically, if it's a white person, they're racist. And so I have to go along with that. Because again, it's totalitarianism, it's groupthink. You have to do it. You must conform. You must walk and toe the party line exactly, just like in Moscow in 1917. And so these days, if you dissent, if you say, no, I'm not going to call someone racist because of their skin color, that is racist, then you are considered a racist. Then you are criticized and singled out. You're considered a homophobe. You're considered a Nazi. You can go back in the 1950s. You can actually find Soviet orders to their agent provocateurs here in the United States where they were told to call anyone who is conservative, constitutionalist, anyone who opposed communism. You were supposed to smear them with the names Nazi, fascist, white supremacist, Klansman, and so on. And so it's no wonder that the media and their mob of little hate-filled minions running around in Black Lives Matter, Antifa, etc., it's no wonder that they're using the same talking points, that they're following the same orders given by Stalin and Khrushchev and all the other Soviet mass murderers. Again, cancel culture is communist culture. There is zero difference. None whatsoever. It's communism. This is the Cultural Revolution in Mao's China. They shamed you, and then they shot you in the back of the head. Or they sent you off to a re-education camp, where you never came back. This is what we're leading to. We're allowing everything to be politicized and radicalized, and groups are becoming militant. You had a group of black militants with this fancy new gear. I wonder who paid for that. George Soros, maybe? They came out. They marched to Stone Mountain or something? And they challenged all the rednecks and all the what do they call them? The boogmen or boog boys, like the boogaloo, right? Anyway, they challenged white people to war. So literally, we're becoming very, very polarized, radicalized, and militant. There's nothing wrong with being militant in favor of freedom. But when you are militant in favor of communist talking points, you mark yourself as an enemy to the Republic. That can't be tolerated. Some people are getting really frustrated right now that there are federal agents in Portland, for instance, militarized federal police, going out there and arresting. These are targeted arrests, by the way. They're targeting criminals, but it's being reported as they're just pulling protesters off the streets and taking them away in unmarked vans. Oh no. No, that's not what's happening. These are targeted arrests against criminals. Now, I personally support that. I've been calling this for this for a long time. We should round up the communists. We should round them up. And they should be given an ultimatum. Either you side with Americanism or, well, other things can happen. Now, I want to end with a really great quote. I'm not going to tell you who said it because people would call me certain names. But let's just say it's a speech from September 13th, 1935 called Communism with the Mask Off. If you want, you can go look it up. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs because this really puts into focus and into perspective what we're engaged in, the type of war that we're fighting. Okay? Quote, Bolshevism, which is in reality an attack on the world of the spirit, pretends to be intellectual itself. Where circumstances demand, it comes as a wolf in sheep's clothing. But underneath that false mask, which it here and there assumes, there are always the satanic forces of world destruction. And where it has had the opportunity of practicing its theories, it has created the workers' paradise, the paradise of the workers and peasants, in the shape of a fearful desert of starving and hungering people. If we are to take the word of its doctrine, then we find a terrible contradiction between its theory and its practice. Its theory is glowing and grandiose, but it carries poison in its attractive gloss. Over against this, what we have from it in reality is terrible and forbidding. This is shown in the millions of sacrifices which have been made in honor of it, through executions with the sword, the axe, or the hangman's rope, or hunger. Moving on, he says, Bolshevism is a world disease. And then he goes on to say, murder of individuals, murder of hostages, and mass murder are the favorite means applied by Bolshevism to get rid of all opposition to its propaganda. We have thus before our eyes a full picture of this fearful and harrowing mass terrorization, which is only approximately paralleled by even the most blood-curdling examples of war or revolution that are recorded in the history of the world. This is the actual system of bloodshed and terror and death which is carried out by hysterical and criminal political maniacs who would have it copied in every country and among every people with the same terrorizing practices, insofar as they might find the possibility of doing so. Bolshevism is the declared enemy of all nations and of all religions and of all human civilization. The world revolution is now, as always, its acknowledged and proclaimed goal. Close quote. Now, I love that when it talks about there are millions of sacrifices which have been made in honor of Bolshevism. Bolshevism is just communism. People try to draw distinctions between Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, socialism, Fabian socialism, communism, Bolshevism, whatever. There's no difference. It's the same thing. It's state domination. It's statism. It's a push for a one world religious order and a one world state, one world government. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is communist policy. It's Soviet policy. The USSR had this policy. We need a one world system, one world government ruled by the Communist Party. They are a murder cult that it's more widespread across the globe than any other group in world history. And they are the ones who have enslaved the world. They are the ones who are behind political correctness, which gave birth to cancel culture. Bolshevism is a world disease. It is the Red Plague. That is the real virus and contagion that we need to single out, identify, quarantine, and eradicate. If we do not, the world will die. That is the true pandemic we should be worried about. Marxism, that is the madness that has gripped the minds of modern man. We must rally behind the ideals of our faith, our families, and our freedom against the destroying, devouring plague of communism. The Communist Manifesto calls for the abolition of the family. It details in the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto how to take over and subvert and enslave a free nation. It says you should be scared of us. We're coming. We're coming to take you over. We're going to blow your brains out when we get there. Lenin thought it was great practice to kill off the intelligentsia, right? So the educated group of leaders in a country. He thought that was just standard. You come in, you shoot the people who would be able to put up the best resistance and who would be able to rally the common people against them, right? So judges, politicians, professors, people who have some influence, people who are educated, you get rid of them first. Now, what cancel culture is trying to do, they're trying to do relatively peacefully what Lenin and the Bolsheviks did with rifles. They're trying to cancel out people, the intelligentsia, right, who have influence over people, who can rally us against communism if they so willed it. But again, human nature is cowardly. We don't want to rock the boat. We rather prefer, as Thomas Jefferson said, the calm of despotism to the boisterous sea of liberty. I prefer the boisterous sea of liberty, personally. It's going to be rocky. Yeah, because we're dealing with individuals. We're dealing with individuals with freedom. We're not dealing with a group who conforms and has the same exact thoughts. We're not cookie-cutter human beings. We're individuals like God created us. We're men and women with minds that work differently, with different experiences, coming from different cultures. But instead, cancel culture wants to cancel out culture. Obviously, that's the name. It wants to do away with any sort of unique identity you might have in your group. If you're black, you have a different culture than I do, right? You have different heritage. So what? We can all unite on the common ideals of liberty, right? The Constitution, human justice, not social justice, but justice in its original term. But instead, they want to do away with that. They want to cancel it out. They want to cancel out, ultimately, anyone who opposes communism. Communism either will prevail and be totalitarianism, right? Or it cannot exist. The moment it stops fighting for that goal, it ceases to be communism. And so the same thing is true with liberty in a sense, that either liberty prevails or it doesn't. Either it lives or it dies. Is our liberty living or dying right now? Well, seems to me that communism is on the rise, and Lady Liberty is on her knees gasping for air. Meanwhile, the majority of us sit back and, oh no, I don't want to be called a racist. Okay, I'll go along with its cancel culture. I'll go wash the shoes of Black Lives Matter Marxist terrorists just so that they don't call me a racist. You know what? You're going to have to just wear these criticisms, because anyone who loves freedom and anyone who opposes totalitarian tyranny, you're going to be smeared by the enemy. That's what they do. Our founding fathers, they were called rebels and terrorists. And today, the Marxists still refer to the Sons of Liberty as domestic terrorists. So you're going to be called a terrorist. You're going to be called a white supremacist if you're white. You're going to be called a Nazi. And that's because the National Socialists actually did oppose Marxism and communism and waged war against the Soviet Union. And so they've done everything they can to use that label to terrorize people into submission. And anyone who says anything to the contrary, anyone who speaks out against communism, they will cancel you. So if you do not want your culture, the things that you've traditionally held sacred to you, that are important to you, free speech, for instance, the right of association. If you love and value these things, if you don't want them to be canceled out, then you've got to stand up against communism, because cancel culture is communist culture, and communism is treason. And communism must die for America to survive. If you take away nothing from today other than that, then this will have been a successful podcast. So please share this with others. Please stand firm against the hate mobs that will come after you when you do the right thing. But just know it is the right thing. You're on the right side. And so I say this and sign off by saying Sic Semper Tyrannis, long live liberty.